continue with Isaiah 53, some difficult verses here. Verse 7, Negas vehu na'aneh, velo yiftach piv, kaseh latabach yubal, ukerachel lifnei gozazeha ne'elama, velo yiftach piv. So we saw in last week's verses the substitutionary suffering of the servant. Now we're going to see his utter meek submissiveness in suffering. Negas is a nifal perfect. The nun has assimilated from nagas, which means to oppress or something like that. So he was oppressed, and he was afflicted, tormented, oppressed. Ana means to oppress. I can't think of another word that would go along with that. I'm not sure. Let me just check quickly. I'm not satisfied with oppressed twice. Yeah, oppressed and afflicted. Yeah, afflicted is a good word for na'ana. Oppressed, and he was afflicted, and he did not open his mouth. No complaint, no anger, no recrimination, silent and submissive. Kaseh is like the lamb, and tebach means slaughter. Like the lamb is brought to slaughter. The root here is yabal, which means to bring, and it's a hofal verb. So, like a lamb, he was brought to the slaughter, and like a rachel, means a female lamb, like a lamb before the, and gazaz means to shear, before the ones shearing her, refers back to rachel, and alam is a verb that means to be silent, and it's another nifal perfect. He was silent, and he did not open his mouth. Now, me otsar umim mashpat lukach. Otser means oppression. We're getting a lot of oppression words. I wish I was better at thinking of more words for this in English. But by oppression and by judgment, he was taken away. I'm pretty sure the mins here are causative. The means by which he was taken away, and the mishpat here is probably not justice, but judgment, the judgment of the court. He's been tried and found guilty, but falsely accused. He was taken away. Ve'et generation, and his generation, mi yesho chayak. Okay, the verb here is siach, which means to consider, and it's a polel verb. So, by injustice and judgment he was taken away, but his generation, comma, who considered, and so the et is showing you sign of the direct object. That's why it gets translated as for his generation or something like that. Not a single one considered as this is happening. Ki nigzar me'aretz chayim, for he was gazar, means to be cut off from the land of the living, and because of the oppression of my people, naga, a blow was to him, a wound or a blow or something like that. So you could take the key a couple different ways here. Who considered? I don't think the considering that they're not doing is that he's cut off from the land of the living, but that the blow of my people, from the rebellion of my people, blow is upon him, his substitutionary suffering. So you could take this as, a time when he is cut off from the land of the living, because he's cut off from the land of the living, but no one considers that it's Israel's sins, the sins of God's people, that cause this suffering. Verse 9, he gave with the wicked his tomb. Hebrew favors impersonal verbs, so this is no one in particular. It gets, in English we say this with a passive verb, even though the verb isn't passive in Hebrew. So he was given with the wicked his tomb, and with the rich in his death. Moat is hiding inside there, in his death. So the servant dies, unambiguously as far as I can see, and there's no recognition, no honor, even in his burial. Now all usually means on top of, or because, or something like that. It can occasionally mean although, or something, and an exception, although no violence he had done, and no deceit in his mouth. He's completely innocent in his suffering. So the servant dies submissively. He's buried, and no one considers. It's important to keep all this in mind as we go into verse 10, and we see the exaltation of the servant. see everyone next week.